Okay, y'all, I just announced that notification in Discord real quick. Welcome to stream. Today we're checking out Elemental Survivors, the alpha version. It goes into full release, or beta potentially. Oh, not exactly sure. On 8/25. I'm very excited. Should be fun. I know their last update added a bunch. I've played some, so you can see here I have some money to spend. I think movement speed up is probably a good way to go, because I get annoyed in these games when we're slow. Coins worth more just always seems like a good idea. Same with attack speed, attack damage. Let's do projectile speed up. And defense, I guess? Yeah. Let's play. So we've got quite a few people unlocked. I've had the most fun so far, I believe, with this guy here, Hero the Hero. Yep, the JRPG hair. The Valkyrie's been okay, but more of a melee class. The Bear's interesting. Let's see, I don't think I've tried this one yet. Let's do that. We only have 16, so we can't unlock another area. Yeah, go here. This is a auto battler sort of game, like Vampire Survivors. Oh, he has this kind of weapon. Okay. Can I just smack him? Okay, yes. Okay, and then we just have to wait for its cooldown. Okay. Okay, we can do that for now. And then these things have a chance to give us health potions, or I got there. A bit extra. Okay, level up. Aim to slash with a follow-up projectile, devastating swipe around you when you stop moving. Use multiple missiles towards a random enemy. Let's do that one. And then you'll see the exclamation point here is telling us that a building spawned. I can't quite... I don't know why the sound effects were turned down. There we go. There we go. Now we can hear everything. Let's do magic lance. That sounds fun. Let's upgrade that. Ah! And I've noticed in this game, a lot of times I'm better off circling back for experience rather than trying to grab it immediately. Oh, it's an equipment shop. Increase walking speed, increase size of dexterity-based attacks, cancel block damage. Let's do our shield. That sounds like a good idea. I do tend to run into the enemies a lot when I'm playing a melee class, which by default this is. Ooh, level up. Let's increase our shield. Ah! Increases magical lance. I like this. It shows us what ability it applies to if it does. So that's really nice. Since it is our main attack. Alright, so see, we're circling back for a bunch of this experience. Now let's give ourselves a slash attack. I think it said it'll slash the direction we're facing. Let's see, are you okay? Lady, she sneezed. Let's upgrade Missile Swarm first. I think that's a good idea. Oh, she's sneezing again. Poor puppy. I don't know that I've seen the slash yet, but I may just not be paying attention. Oh, I think I just saw it there. Ooh, a health potion. That's good to know. Where's our health even at? 12. Ooh, we bring someone on board. Both of their abilities help our lance. Let's go with the ranger though. I do like the ranger a lot. Oh, I actually mean to pick up that potion, but it happened. And then the eyeball looking things, I don't know if they actually are eyeballs. Believe give us gold, or the Zill is the gold in this game. Yeah, let's upgrade the ranger since we just got them on board. Or her on board. I'm sure. Ah! We're just trying to survive. Over to the right there you can see the turn timer, or like how long it is until the next wave spawns, or the next type of enemies, or the bosses. We can also reroll here if we don't like what we're getting, but I found little need to do that other time. Like, I can see the reason to upgrade most things. I guess maybe if you're looking for something very particular. Or maybe save it to reroll companions and stuff. Let's increase our tower. This kind of game is typically more up Bo's alley. But the devs reached out to me and I decided I want to give it a I can't talk today. I want to give it a try and I'm glad I did. It's been a lot of fun so far. I played for quite a while. Let me see what Steam says. Yeah, I played for 4 hours, so I did get like pretty sucked in successfully to the gameplay and was enjoying it. That's probably a few weeks ago, or give or take. And then since it releases in a couple days, I figured that would be a great time for us to officially take a look. And I didn't really feel like playing Pally on stream today. I'm just getting to the point where a lot of what I'm doing in that is really repetitive, which is fine with me outside of stream, but makes it a little harder while streaming to like talk and everything. Let's upgrade our lamps. Ooh, we got so much experience over here. I really can't talk. Let's do slash attack to try to keep things a little even. We will go up towards exclamation point, but trying to kind of bob and weave to get some of this experience too. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I'm gonna say maybe the slash, but uh-oh. My brain shows for me. Okay, there we go. That worked out okay. That worked out okay. Gold. And obviously it's roguelite in the sense that, as you saw at the beginning, we upgrade things outside of each battle. Ooh. So this one helps my slash and my lance. This one just helps my lance. It increases strength. Knockback boost when hit and increases holy nail damage. Let's do him. I don't... That's phrasing. I don't think we've used that person before. Upgrade our ranger again, and then we should probably upgrade other things for a little bit before we do more. And something else has already spawned. Wait, was it a boss? I didn't see anything come up. I will say one thing, I don't know if this is in the plans or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I do wish my mouse, since you can use your mouse to aim, as you can see here. It's not bound to the screen though, so oftentimes it'll trigger like my bars on the bottom and stuff. And that can be distracting for one, and then detrimental if I accidentally click on it. So locking it to the screen in this kind of game I'm all for. Oh, now a boss spawn. Okay. What's the exclamation point? Ooh, I managed to clear a path. Beef Chunk, the Holy Knight. Like every paladin ever. Ah! I did not mean to run right into them. I'm trying to grab this buttload of experience real quick. Yeah, the boss. The cool thing about the bosses is if you wander too far away from them, they'll come, like if you let them go off screen, they'll enter from a different part of the screen. So you can't just like run away from them forever. You really need to face them, or you'll end up with a bunch of bosses on the screen, and that can be a real problem. I don't remember how the slime attacks. I'm a little scared. I really just want to see what this exclamation point is though. Oh, see, we got another boss already. Ooh, longsword, axe, increase knockback, increases strength-based attacks, decreases cooldown for magic text. Yeah, let's do that. We have 2 of them. Let's see if we can do a bit more damage to him. Let's do that one. And you can see in the top left when your attacks are gonna go off. I'll be honest, I don't really pay attention to that, which I'm sure is evident. I just kind of go on vibes because I'll never remember like what all's what. The lance doesn't seem to do too much damage to these bosses, or I'm just aiming very badly, which is possible. Can be a little hard to see what's happening. But I'd say overall, my impression of this game so far is just super fun. It's really kind of chill. It feels very low pressure to me. Because, like, it's not like anything is like, oh my god, detrimental. If we die, we die. It's not a big deal. We'll try again. We'll have more gold so we can upgrade things. But just, it doesn't feel very stressful. Like, I really doubt we're gonna get to the end of this one, because apparently we can't damage the slime and things worth anything. Seems like a problem. That potion help us? It did. Okay. I don't remember how to see if we have full health or not. Just kill a boss. Can you do that, game? Can you kill a boss? Oh, not before another one spawns. Jeez. And they drop a big chest that gives us multiple upgrades. Feels like it would be really helpful since we're having such a hard time killing them. There we go. It's like a little egg, but I know it's a chest. Okay, so we got Magic Lance level up. Level up our Knight. And our shield. Cool. And we leveled. Magic Missile since it's the lowest. Oh, another boss. He seems really scary though. Let's head towards the exclamation point. Maybe try to kill the slime while we're at it. Oh, there's two of them. Like, are we heading the wrong way? Nope, just 2 exclamation points. Get this gold. You complete the level, all the gold will come to you. If you die, it does not. Just as throwing that out there. Ooh, another person. She heals but never forgets. Increases holy ring radius, heals over time. Ooh, that could be really good. Yeah, let's do that. Who doesn't want to heal over time? That always seems like a good idea, yeah? Alright, let's see if we can get the slime boss. Surely by this point, we can be strong enough to take him down. We are just taking a ton of damage to do it, but I think it's worth it. Hopefully, it'll give us good upgrades. 3 again. We got our Knight leveled up. Our Beef Chunk leveled up. Plus 1 speed is good. Increased block damage. Okay. That's something. Now I guess we'll try to go towards this other exclamation point. Use our lance to clear our way a little bit if we can. Oh. We are not doing enough damage to kill the bats. That seems bad. That seems legitimately bad. Let's grab these while we're here. Ooh, health. Probably a good idea. I'm not actually sure if it'll let you take the potions if you don't at least need some health. I feel like I remember it not letting me before, but I don't remember for sure. Okay, let's head towards them. We're getting close. Oh, good damage. What do we got here? Ram's Helm increases damage versus bosses, increases pickup radius, or Witch Hat increases number of projectiles. Ooh, I do like the pickup radius though. That'll help us a lot in the long run. Help us pick up more experience and whatnot without getting so close. Oh gosh, these golem guys do not do enough damage at all. Let's increase our pickup radius again. I'm kind of just trying to grab as much experience as I can so we can try to level things up. Because clearly we need to. Although if all I level up is our pickup radius, then I won't in fact be able to stay alive for very long. Look at the little damage we're doing. Maybe the lance just is not my weapon. Ah! There's so many bad guys. It does seem like the magic missiles help a lot, just they're not aimed. So it doesn't always help in the direction we need it to. Hey, more health though. Oh, we don't need it. It didn't let us take it. That answers that question. Let's kill another boss. before another one spawns. I think is about to happen anyway. Let's upgrade our cleric. And we're doing okay health-wise at least, even if we're taking forever to heal anyone. Or to kill anyone. It's so bad. Okay, let's see if we can double back to get some of this experience. Just maybe. Another boss spawned! We're just gonna get overrun by bosses pretty soon. Ow. He was gonna like rock, like smash. Like Hulk smash. I'm so happy we continued to get rain overnight, and it helped with the smoke and air quality so much. We're actually going to be able to do the market on Saturday, which I was a little worried about. But it's looking like it'll be okay. Thank goodness. I don't even know if I'm killing anything. It is very hard to tell. I need to get up to where some are previous experiences. But I'm not sure which way to go. Let's say we're not killing these golems anywhere near fast enough to survive this though. And it's gonna get real bad and then we're gonna be dead like very quickly. Pretty much though. Just trying to get all the gold we can on the map. Or the Zil. Then at least we can upgrade as much as we can. Try to. See that one. Is there more up here? More experience. Hi, boss. Boss is like at half health. They've been on the screen forever. There's the other boss. And the other two bosses, I think. Sure, attack speed. That might be a good idea. Look at all those bats! Holy heck. Oh my gosh, that is so many. There's a lot of entities. My dudes. I kind of just have to walk through enemies now. Sure. Why not? I'm gonna be dead real soon. Unless we just find a cache of health potions. I don't see that happening. Yeah, let's decrease cooldown. It seems to be the only thing doing decent damage for us. Sure. Let's upgrade the cleric. That might be helpful. Hey, gold. I'll take it. If we don't get health potions, at least we get money. Like, that is something. Oh, our health is going down so fast. Ah! I'm too scared to double back. Yeah, this is not gonna end well. 36 health. Oh dear. Even less now. Oh, nope, I don't think. Oh, we made it through. I'm genuinely surprised. What is shooting things at me? Don't know, probably the boss. Alright. Yep. Like, that's where it's gonna end. Death. Destruction. I just don't think that was a good combination for us. Alright, let's... I think projectile size is good. And let's play with our hero. Is this one we've already... Oh, we actually haven't completed this one with him? Oh, or these are the unlocks possible. I think those are the unlocks possible. Wait, how much do we get? Point boost, enemy boost, Move speed boost. Oh, that's cool. Let's try it. Let's try it. I don't think I've done expert on any of them. Maybe we will before the stream ends. But see, fireballs is how our JRPG hero starts. Yeah, let's do Axe Volley. It's fun and reminds me of Rogue Legacy, which makes me happy. Holy Strike sends randomly. Sure. That reminds me of Isaac. All good things. This feels so calm after everything a minute ago. Feels so much calmer. And you'll notice the axes seem to do damage when they hit the ground, not like who they pass over. You know, I guess that luck stat of heroes probably also helps a lot. What's behind here? A potion. We'll just hang out for a bit. Since we have a potion right here. I can get a bunch of experience. Oh, but now you're being summoned. Let's upgrade the Axe Volley. I do think it's a good idea. What we got over here? Oh, another thing spawned. There. We want to go to this one. There we go. Let's see. Vera the Bun. She kicks butt. +1 projectile increases arrow shot damage, increases dex and luck. Okay. The Ranger and then Gloom. Just a gloomy lad. Increases strength and strength-based attacks. That is cool, but I think we're gonna have to go with the Bun. Because 1, she's adorable, and 2 is more helpful. In the grand scheme of things. Oh, we have the trolls spawning now. I don't actually know that they're called trolls, but they look like troll dolls to me. So that's what we're gonna go with for now. Let's increase our main guy as we head over to this other one. The Holy Light looks so cool. I think we're doing pretty good so far. Increase the damage of SPI. I'm not sure what that stands for. Based attacks. Ram's helm increases damage for bosses. Increases size of magic based attacks. I mean, that sounds fun. So we're gonna do it just so we can see bigger fireballs. We can keep upgrading that. This honestly just sounds enjoyable. I wish I remember where that health potion was, but I don't. So let's have to find another one to camp out by. Let's upgrade our bunny friend. Where did something spawn? Oh, this way. This would be a good character to get the what is it? The radius for the pickup radius. We have so many attacks that go like out from us. Yeah. Beardy the Barbarian. Oh, sorry. Gogan the Barbarian, who is Beardy. Hold out for all strength-based attacks. Negative. So minus cooldown, I think. Increases slash damage, increases strength. Cecile the Paladin, she's gotcha. Increases holy ring damage, chance to block attacks, increases magic and SPI. And then the cleric. They're gonna go with the barbarian though. It seems like a good move. How much we can damage here. I think we need to try to circle back for some experience. Yeah, me chat. We'll do that some more. Okay, we'll pick up a decent amount here. Yeah, let's do that. The slash seems to be helping out a ton. Especially for clearing areas, so that plus the holy attack, so that we can go back for experience. which is extremely helpful. Should mage hat again. Just because, again, I want to see how big the fireballs can get. I'm sure there's a limit, but just to see. Ooh, we got some little robed dudes. Almost look like they're dancing while they're casting. It's kind of adorable. Almost feel bad for trying to kill them if they weren't also trying to kill me. Okay, where did something spawn south of us? I can break this. Oh, it's just gold. That's fine. Let's do that one. I think is the right move. Trying to avoid their projectiles is gonna get very hard after a while. But I think we can do it. Power shield, increase walking. Let's do walking speed. I don't even know how much it increases it by, but honestly, I just find it very helpful. Alright, let's hang out here for a second since we have a health potion. Do that again. Okay. Ooh, we're doing pretty good. I didn't even look at what level we got to last time. We're level 12 now. That'd be at least sort of okay. Let's upgrade our main dude again. Where'd something spawn south of us? Oh, okay. Do that. Ooh, and a boss. Perfect. I think we'll have better luck hitting the boss this time, since we don't have to get quite as close to actually hit him. But we'll see how it goes. I think I keep walking right into their projectiles. It's so hard to actually see, like, pay attention to them. Not hard, like overly difficult, just my brain doesn't want to pay attention to them. Oh, we're gonna go with our bear friend. Mostly for the super fluffy treat. I feel like that's adorable. Alright, let's go ahead and see if we can get some damage on the boss here. Let's give a health potion. Also trying desperately to pay attention to where we're going, like where we're walking. I'm very bad about just looking at the boss and forgetting that there are enemies spawning all around me. Let's upgrade our funny. Luck upgrade just seems good in general to be feeding into. But surely that is like gold we get, drops, things like that. Let's do mage hat again. Levels are decently big now. I don't know if that actually means they hit more enemies or not. Maybe they're just less likely to miss if we do it that way. Let's do our bear. Ooh, level 17. That's pretty good. The boss is almost dead. We kill the first boss before we get to the second one. We're already improving. Well, I think this is an easier area technically. Let's do fireball and then see what we get upgrades for. Just one. Alright, but for our axe volley, cool. Throw those more often. Don't mind that at all. Yeah, I think unless something spawns, we're gonna try to go back up towards the right. I think we left quite a bit of experience back here. Like on the ground. Yep. Not bad. Let's do Holy Strike. Upgrade that. Looks like we left some up here too. Teddy bear. Health, thank you. Oh. Did real bad at avoiding the slimes. Holy Strike could go off more. I feel like that would be very helpful. Boss spawned. Slimes. Or a slime? I guess I don't know if there's more than one. We'll see when they get here. Oh, there he is. Let's do teddy bear again. Walking speed is just helpful. Like, no matter which way you look at it. He's not taking tons of damage, but it does seem to be doing okay. See if we can slowly work our way around. I'm sure there's all kinds of things I'm not being optimal about. Like I said, these are not my typical games. I'm enjoying it quite a bit so far. Oh, I didn't even hear the exclamation point spawn. Read the barbarian because he's the lowest, and then try to head over towards our exclamation point here. And do some boss damage. There's so much to keep track of. This kind of... ooh, we got a magnet. Yes. We didn't see that at all last time. So basically it magnetizes everything in a certain radius of us to us. So we'll probably level quite a bit here. Let's do Axe Volley. The Barbarian. Holy Strike. Fun. Holy Strike. Teddy bear. There we go. This is not bad. That was pretty good. It was helpful at least. Okay. I'll try to get the boss away from the exclamation point. Let's increase defense against strength-based attacks. I think that's a good idea. I guess we'll see. Picked up the health potion. Also just took more damage. Super fun. Ah! But I was gonna say, this makes me want to play the League of Legends battle game, like Teamfight Tactics. That's what it's called. Took my brain a second there. I kind of want to play Teamfight Tactics. Although, man, it's been so long since I've played. I don't know the meta for any of that anymore. It's changed so much. But could be fun. Maybe we'll do that on Fridays. Tomorrow's my day off. I'll see if Bo will play with me. Because it's fun when you're both struggling, right? Feels less lonely. Grab some more experience. I'm gonna circle around these mountains, make it hard. There we go. Let's upgrade the volley again. I think we kind of need to go full tilt into the volley. Either that or fire. Like, don't upgrade anything else yet. That and fire. And do as much damage as possible. Magic fire. Another boss spawn? Uh-oh. We haven't defeated the previous one. That is usually a bad sign in these games. Wait, and another one? What the heck? Okay, neither of our choice options were on there. Oh, I guess we could have rerolled. I didn't really think about that. See if we can get around here to get some of these experience. Oh, that holy stuff just missed everything. That's good. There's so many of them shooting at me. I need to tank some damage to get in there. Magic fire, yep. There we go. At least it's killing those dudes in one shot. Is good. Good amount of fire damage. He's almost dead. Now the other boss is right on top of him, which is unhelpful for us. Let's see if we can get him. This maybe. This maybe health? Okay. Basically immediately used. Axe volley. And let's see what it gives us. Ooh. Increased armor. Okay. Fireball. Good. And our bun. Okay. That is fine. A lot of this is cleared, which is good. do Fireball again. It's a good idea to max it. Ooh, we're level 42. I don't even know what, like, max level is. Let's do our main hero. Get through here. Oh, it was not health. That's okay. See if we can defeat at least this boss. Fireball, yep. As much damage as possible. Wish we could aim the axes better, but I'm not good at figuring out where they're gonna land, honestly. He's on fire. Okay, we did that. We just need to clear the space now a little bit, or we're never gonna be able to pick up the chest. There's too many of them. Let's do Fireball again, and see what we got. Whoa, 5! Nice. Holy Strike upgrade. Holy Strike. Holy Strike. Our Mage Hat, cool, and Vera. Very nice. That should be helpful. I think that's the most you can get in a chest too. That is pretty great. I don't know if the further you're in, the more likely it is that you get more things in a chest. Like, I'm not exactly sure if that's a mechanic. But I guess we'll see. One of these later ones is just 1, then probably not. Did get 5 again though. Holy Strike, Axe Volley, a Barbarian, Mage Hat, and Teddy Bear. Cool, cool, cool. I do appreciate that it has the explanations there every time for you, in case you forget what something does. Or for those people who are really min-maxing their stats and whatnot. For this kind of game lends to that a lot. Oh, bomb. I don't know which one of them puts down bombs, but I definitely keep running right into them. Alright, just more Zill. Wow, our holy fire stuff is huge now. Of all this experience, that is such a satisfying noise. It's kind of amazing. I also don't know what max level on abilities are either. Surely they exist. I doubt they can scale up forever. Oh hey, a magnet. Spawned like right next to us. Let's do our bear friend. Armor. A barbarian. Armor. Our teddy bear. And now we've run out of things to upgrade, so now we get to choose health. Or we can just take money. Or we can choose always, like if there's just one we want to worry about. I'm actually going to say always money. So 1, because it's faster, it won't stop us. And 2, because really we're just trying to upgrade right now, right? If we die, we die. That does mean we have to keep an eye out for health potions. We won't get to heal from the levels. But we will get a lot more money. I didn't realize these are mountains. Ah! Ooh. Not a potion. I'm gonna find one. We can keep it around us, but I am not having much luck there. Not at all. Ah. Oh my gosh, there is so much going on this screen right now. A boss just spawned. Another boss spawned. Alright, let's see what we can do. Another 3? Okay, that's a lot. See if we can get at least one of them down. We're close. Okay, we did it. Oh! Apparently a magnet spawned. I didn't even see it before running into it. Ah! I just want to open the chest. I think it just gave us money. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how many waves are in this. More than 18. You can see that much. And this is where just the survival part comes in, I think. Ooh, health potion, finally. Oh, we killed both the bosses. And we get to the treasure chest. Any point in time. Like, you have to, like, really walk away. Get them off of them. There we go. Although I also don't know if we were to win, if those open up automatically too. It kind of makes sense like they would. But I don't know if they would. Probably not get ourselves boxed in there. There are a lot of mountains over here though. Ooh. Thank you. Oh, unsure where the boss went. Seems like a concern. Oh, there we go. The big boss is gonna spawn pretty soon. I think maybe actually we're placing those bombs now that I see it. The big ones. Use health potion. Okay. It's like we're getting awfully close to a boss spawning. Ah, come on, kill this boss. Can't kill this one. There's no way we're killing the Naga. So it looks like 20, I think, might be the final stage. I might be wrong though. Hard to tell. Alright, let's see if we can open more of these torches. I don't know why, but my pinky finger is falling asleep, and that is slightly uncomfortable. Oh no, another boss spawn. Okay, let's try to kill this one then. Because we really need to not have a ton of them on the screen at a time. Okay, there we go. Okay, at least that one's dead. Yep, and it does look like 20 is at the win condition. So let's see if we can kill Toad real quick. Any luck at all. Trying to do as much damage as we can. While not just letting the enemies walk right into us. I don't know what those guys are. They seem to disappear when we damage them. They pop. Maybe they're distractions, like fake bosses. Don't have any health to get, but we do have some health. Ooh, there's another exclamation point. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's another magnet. Okay. Sure, why not? We have a lot of money. That is very good. We'll be able to upgrade quite a bit. Come on, kill the boss. You can do it. They're so scary, look at them. Do we have to find the real one? That does not pop when we attack it. I'm gonna handle Mushroom Man first though, that is a lot of spells they just sent at me. Okay, now I think the actual boss spawned. Is what it just said. So I wonder if those, I think the other ones do stick around. Okay, but they don't have health bars, so at least we know it's not another one spawned. I say at least we know it's not them. Area boss spawned. Oh, okay, so these were just lesser bosses. They just spawn at basically the same time. Cool, 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 cool. Well, hopefully we can do this. Remember what I said, we can't just run away. Because, as you'll see, they will pop back up on whichever direction we're running. I can set this one on fire some. It'll help. Oh, the area boss, I believe, is the big guy here. Who is taking damage, but not taking all that much damage. I see a torch. Oh, a couple. No, not money. Need health. Ah, more money. Oh, normally that would not be a problem. It's just not what we're looking for right now. Okay, one of them is almost dead. You can just keep on them. Trying really hard to keep as close as I can without just getting bodied. Kill some of the fake ones if we can. Level 76, holy heck. Nuts. We did it. I don't know what else we collected there. It looked like we picked up something else. Okay, let's keep going. Not entirely sure where the area boss is. I don't think it's this guy, unless it is. Yeah, I just didn't realize. Okay, try to find our way around. We're doing okay. I have spec'd quite heavily into health. As an overall stat, which I mean, obviously a good idea. Oh, it shot fireballs when we opened it too. I don't think I realized that the first time. Okay, where's the area boss? Hello? Area boss, where are you? All I see is your minions. Really are supposed to try to stay on screen though. Genuinely not sure where they went. If I just chill for a second. Too many minions. They just seem to respawn. Where the heck is it? What's up north, they thought, so I guess maybe we'll just try going that way. The area boss work differently? Or are we just stuck here forever? That'd be unfortunate. I don't want to have to die. Oh, there he is. Why are you running away from me? I know I'm scary, but it's not necessary. There we go, let's see if we can... They do seem to be running away from me. They do, it's the only boss that does. It's kinda lame. But I guess... You can't explore as much. Attacks seem to be doing okay though. Seem a little stuck on this mountain. There, half health. We can do it. I believe in us. Ah, no, don't get stuck. Getting stuck would be bad. Oh gosh, it clicked out for a second. That was not good. Level 81, holy heck. Oh my gosh. All I can really do is just avoid touching bad guys at the moment. All I'm trying for. Any health potions anywhere near us. Not seeing any. Okay. Maybe we shouldn't have picked only money. Just gotta stay on them. We're so close. We really need all of our attacks to hit. Come on, so close. Come on. You can do it. Ah! Yes! Success! Ooh, I got achievements. Get Fireball to max level, get Holy Strike to max level, and get Axe Volley to max level. Nice! We did it! Woo! Dang, we did so much damage too. Crazy. Cool. Evolved Magic Fireball is now available. Evolved Axe Volley and Evolved Holy Strike. Ooh, cool. That's new. That's like legitimately a new thing. Cool. Okay, now to get my finger to wake up because I don't know why it fell asleep. Anyone knows what causes your pinky finger dash that side of your hand to fall asleep randomly, let me know, because apparently that's a thing in my life now. It's great. Give me 1 second. I'm just writing something down real quick that I thought about, so I'm good thinking about it. Today's date, the 23rd. Okay, there we go. Let's do movement speed up, actually a ton. Let's just do that. And then attacks and go from there. I think that's a good idea. Or are there secrets? What hits can be affected by combo count boost? Who do we want to play as? Oh yeah, Bun has the bombs. Okay. We could try the Ranger. We have our Gloomy Lad. I kind of want to try our bear just to see. Let's do that. We haven't unlocked anything here, so why not? Why not see? Alright, it looks like strength is our main stat, so that'll be what we want to focus on. Why can't we hear the music? And the sound effects turn themselves down again. That was really weird. I don't know. Yeah, let's just upgrade him for now. Although this area apparently starts with ranged people, which is unfortunate. Strength is our highest stat. So yeah, let's use Axe Volley. Apparently we're personally throwing them, is what I'm gathering from this. Dex isn't great. Let's upgrade our Volley. I think that's the way to go. I don't know what exactly our range on our slash attack is, but it's not like directly next to us melee. It's not too far off, but it's not directly next to us. Let's see. Brutal Swing, yep. There we go, another strength attack. That's what we're looking for. And man, is it slow to start out. Let's upgrade the Bear Claw. Oh, I think we might trigger the slash. Is it by not moving? It is, okay. We're gonna have to try to remember that. Yeah, let's just upgrade our bear. Oh, something spawned. I didn't realize that first. Probably miss those a lot. You're just staring at the screen like, hello. Pay attention, Shikari. Brutal Swing, yeah. Upgrade that. The snakes are kind of adorable character design now, or enemy design. I don't know. I like them. They're so creative in like the different enemy designs. Let's do Axe Volley. I wonder if now if we get it to level 10 then it becomes the evolved one. Because it said like that's unlocked now. I think I'm gonna reroll. Ooh, Gloom helps with everything, so that is the way to go for us to go with him. Perfect. Perfection. Let's do our bear for now. Our main bud here. Try to use our slash to get us out of like tight spots. I think is the best way to do that. Let's do Gloom. You're taking some damage, but I guess it's to be expected with a melee character. Gonna take more than with our ranged character. Ow. Let's do another level up though. Let's do Gloom. I love Gloom's hair. It's very also JRPG-ish hair, but I enjoy it. Snake through there. Huh. Unintentional fun. Oops, I'm gonna spawn down here. There we go. Some of the ranged dudes away from us if possible. Ooh, there's new guys spawning. What we got? A mage, magic and luck. And all pretty bad for us. Increases strength and dex though. Yeah, let's do it. I think that's okay. I don't think I've actually been in this area before either, so we'll see what these enemies types are that come up. I have no idea. Looks like the new guys spawning a minute ago were like little golem dudes. Yeah, these ones. The witch hats on. They look like golems to me anyway. I should make some cute little witch hats for some of my plushies. I think that would be adorable. I wonder if people would want them or buy them if we did it where like they could be added onto any plushie. And like with like a little chin strap. I guess either one. Increases size, increases damage. Let's do size because then it'll hit more people. I believe is how that works. Increase HP is not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. But yeah, that like really cleared some space out. I think size was the way to go. Guys, size doesn't matter except when it does. Longsword, sure. Let's clear some space for us. If we can. There we go, trying to get up to whatever spawn to this time. Grab this XP though. We'll do longsword again. Ooh, money. Only 73 zil so far. You really don't earn it tons until later. Neither of these are great. Still have one more reroll, so yep, barbarian, there we go. I think this is probably a near perfect combination of characters to have in a party together. Like, honestly. Ooh, yep, upgrade our barbarian since he's new. I feel like I tend to try or want to try to keep everything somewhat even. But I do see after this last one, like the upside to like trying to max something, if it actually levels them up in some way that I did not realize was a thing. Alright, let's see if we can get the snake dead. And I like snakes in real life. Not in here. We get other stuff by us when we do the slash. Be for the best. Doesn't seem bad though. Its cooldown's a lot better than it was too. Very helpful. Let's do Bear Claw. Yep. Yay, we did it. See what we get upgraded. Bear Claw! If I say that too many times over, I'm just gonna want donuts. Someone I was following or watching stream earlier too was talking about Krispy Kreme, and that already made me want donuts. More so that it made me realize I hadn't had donuts in a really long time. That realization made me want them. Are y'all like that with any sort of, like, certain kinds of foods? Like when you realize that you haven't had them in a while, all of a sudden you just will continually crave them. I'm definitely like that. Your Gloom. See what this exclamation point is if we can get over here. Ooh, I think we're gonna do pickup radius for this one. That is the way to go. Axe volley. Those axes really are huge right now. Like, ginormous. Let's try Barbarian. Increasing his attack damage seems like a good idea. There we go. Maybe we should double back at some of this experience we would have left behind. Let's do the Valkyrie. They're lowest at the moment. These one-eyed bat things do not want to die though. They're very strong. Not bad. Let's do Bear Claw again. See if they really take a second to die. The boss spawned. Axe volley, yes. Clear that out a little bit. Hi, boss. I don't know if I can like control if my axes hit him very reliably at all. Flash should be a little easier, but I think I keep getting the range messed up a little bit. Ah, so many projectiles. Let me get rid of some of that BS. By that I just mean the other enemies. Jack-o'-lanterns? They're so cute but so scary. I love hate it. I love hate it. Do the brutal swing. It's been a second and let's see what it gives us. Ooh, 3. Got our longsword level up, axe volley. Cool. And gloom. Nice. Strength is at 25. That is pretty dang good. Say so myself. I have so much experience over here from kiting the boss around. So much. Must collect. Must level. Should just kind of be the tagline for these kind of games, huh? Ooh. Got an achievement for listening to this song for a certain amount of time. Interesting. I do like all the music in the game so far too. It's all been very enjoyable. Not like annoying or repetitive, which can happen sometimes. Overall, pretty good. on my slasher and we get in a bad, really bad, but when we were more surrounded. There's another exchange point hasn't spawned yet. But that looks okay. We'll see. Another one would be nice though. Sure, we'll pick up radius a bit more. It's actually pretty far away now. It's fantastic. Especially with our attacks knocking things back. Whoa, the axes are so big now. They're huge. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Keep on again. Can only be an improvement. Maybe we can hang off now since we're picking up experience from off the screen. We'll work on our damage a bit more. Shoot Bear Claw. Yes, please. Oh, boss man. Boss man has spawned, but where is he? Oh, over there. Got a long sword. Cleared our way to the boss. Decent damage. Yep, not bad at all. Already got him to half health. Let's do Bear Claw again so we can get it to level 10, because I don't think we've done that before. I don't quite remember though. Yeah, we did it. Woo! Good drink real quick. And 5 things. Nice. Bear Claw. Perfect. Honestly, it's probably the bleed chance too that's helping so much. Increase radius, nice. Brutal swing, axe volley, and brutal swing. Cool, 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 cool. And something spawned. Brutal swing's the last thing we have. Ooh, so I see a green exchange point and a yellow one. I'll be honest, I don't know what the different colors dictate. I have not paid enough attention to figure that out. I'm sure other people might know. I wonder if there's anything else we can get. Oh yeah, I think so, because we have another slot up there that's empty by our garland and longsword in the top right. Ooh, dragon shield. Chance to block, increase luck stat. I'm gonna reroll. These walking speed, dex, base attacks, which is nothing. Let's increase coin value. Alright. We're gonna do. And let's go see what the green one is. So the yellow one was equipment of some sort, at least. Ow. That spin attack is insane now. Keep increasing coin value. I think means the big coins, like the eyeball looking ones we pick up. But I'm not positive. It would make sense though, right? We pick up stuff from so far away. These guys. It's a bunch of batsies. Oh my gosh, how far away is this exclamation point? Like, holy heck. It's pretty stinking far away. And the boss spawned. Oh, I'll never get over to it. Ooh, magnet. Fuck some stuff in. We haven't been leaving as much on the table as normal, the garland. Ooh, do a potion this time just to see. Okay, it doesn't look like we need it. Oh, I didn't even look down at my health. I didn't know there's a potion there. I'll just do all money again. Because honestly, our damage is pretty ridiculous. Oh, boss one. Didn't even hear it say it. I'm not even confident it did too. honestly. Probably so. There we go. Now we have so many potions up here. Okay, what is this one? Axe one blitz axes towards the 4 corners. Ooh, even more axes. Woo! So many axes. Just keep the boss at our 4 corners then. I think it might have changed our volley to that, if I'm seeing this correctly, which I mean, honestly dope. Maybe that's what we unlocked. Nice. Kind of just melted that boss though. And it's the only thing that could upgrade, so of course we got 5 of them. Well, that's one way to do it. It's so many of them. It's like constant. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have the hardest time seeing where I am. This is crazy. So yeah, y'all, this game comes out in a couple days and you should check it out because this is fantastic. This is so much fun. Yeah, I like this melee-ish class thing I got going on. Okay, where's the next boss? Looks like soon if that's us. I'm assuming the giant pumpkin is a boss. Oh, but not before Mushroom Man. I might actually be able to just stand here for the most part when there's not a boss. Come on. There we go. Not sure what it did when we opened it other than money. It's a little unclear. We don't need any health at the moment, so we're just gonna hang out for a second. I'm gonna test our theory. Anything actually gets through these lines or not. Not so far. Some have gotten a little close. Yeah, not really. Fun. Okay, let's kill all the things. Probably also because we're killing things from so far away. With our ridiculous axes. Can we change this song? No? Apparently not. Doesn't seem like it anyway. We leveled again. Looks like we're getting pretty close to another boss. I think for us to lose this one, something catastrophic would have to happen. We just got the perfect NPCs to use together. Like the absolute perfect ones. Oh yeah, there were 36 instead of 10. That upgrade to their cost, or to what they're worth, is really good. I forgot which upgrade it was that did it, like what it was called, but it was definitely worth it. And we still somehow have 25 luck. Like that's a lot of luck. At least I would think. Seems like a lot to me. I haven't even been stopping to do my slash. That is crazy. Alright, looks like we're getting close though. I'll stay around the health potions from the boss spawns. Just in case we need them. I'd rather be close by. It's gotta be close. There we go. I was like, based on the little thing on the right hand. Where is he? Boss man? Oh, there you are. Found him. We want to keep them at an angle if we can, so our axes can hit them. And put in that bleed too. Almost done. There we go. Nice. Oh, it sent out a ton of axes. That's what I did last time. That's fun. This map just reminds me how close we are to spooky season. We're not even like, well, we're pretty close to October. I'm just really ready for fall. Like, super duper ready for fall. And some pumpkin spice. And the weather cooling off would be great. Less fires would be great too, although the ones by us, as far as I know, all been downgraded because of the rain. So like they're having a much better time keeping them under control. So that's fantastic. It's very, very good. So that will remain the case. Let's see if we left any experience over here. Doesn't look like it. Ew. Ooh, the golems actually aren't dying in one hit. I am shocked. Oh, hi. Hi, mushroom. Almost didn't see you because you're blended in. You kind of look like a purple rock. Have to admit. Almost got him. Yay, we did it. Didn't even take any damage. That is insane. Oh, another boss. Was the big boss a giant skeleton for this one? I just saw that over there. That looks so cool. I'm actually really excited to see it. Another boss spawn. See if I can get them. There we go. Both at an angle. Oh, one of them died. I'll keep you at an angle now. Things do seem to be getting a little bit stronger now, though. At least the final boss will take some finagling on our part. Ooh. Oh, that spawned a lot. Okay, so final boss should be spawning any minute now. Double check that we don't need that. Okay. There is so much happening on this screen. Surprised we can even see our intrepid heroes. Boss not spawning yet? I feel like it was way past the marker on the right when the boss spawned last time too. Maybe they're off a little bit. It was an update or something. Who knows? Dang, we're level 104! Y'all, it's crazy. We have 13,000 gold. If we'll make it to 14,000. I don't know. I do kind of wonder where the boss is gonna spawn. Don't think there's anything else for us to gather. Yeah, lots of health. Lots and lots. This is a fun time to kind of take in the design though of all the enemies. They all just look so cool. Although the bats kind of remind me of Zubat for some reason. I think it's just because there's so many of them. Like when they're packed on top of each other. Reminds me of trying to get through the caves in a Pokemon game and just getting completely destroyed by Zubats because they won't leave you alone. Like, I think the entire reason repels were invented in the Pokemon world, just for Zubats. They would get insane. Go one direction and see if we loop. Or we do at some point. We might just hit an edge. I don't know. I believe the sides have edges. If I remember correctly from last time I played. I'm trying to head both directions at the same time. Ooh, a magnet. Like nothing for it to pick up. We already pick up in such a large radius. Oh. Stupid projectiles. Wasn't for those who could probably just stand still. We might still be able to not like technically die, but we would probably take damage. I don't think they aim quite like stormtroopers. Not quite, at least. It was a little concerning. The final boss hasn't spawned yet, unless I just didn't notice the pop-up and I don't know where they're hiding. I don't see them. But okay, game. Oh, there's a base. Okay. Let's find the corner. Kinda in love with the axes though. This upgraded version that just goes out straight is so much easier to aim. Oh. We found that corner, so let's go up here. You might be able to see if there's level cap though. Or it eventually just stops letting us go any higher. Oh, here's a cap. Looks like it's just a mountain range though. think it'd also be kind of cool to have skins in this game, like different weapon skins and stuff. That would be kind of dope. Maybe you could unlock through achievements or whatnot. I definitely think that would be a good time. I don't think he's gonna show up though. We've been at just this section for a while. I'm gonna assume probably a bug. I just find money though, I guess. We feel just a tidge overpowered. I'll give it till it hits the 30. If I still haven't found him or nothing spawned, then I think we'll just abandon, I guess? I hope we still get the money, but yeah, I'm not sure what other choice we have. We don't know where he is. Definitely should have spawned by now too. Like, for sure. We can try the standing here thing. That's something we wanted to test out. Well, now they're showing mages. It makes it less fun. Oh, nope, they'll get to us eventually. Well, that's too bad. Definitely could have beat this one. Even a good way to abandon or just have to die. I don't even know if I can let myself die. I can't get close enough to take damage. Uh-oh. If I just stand here. So then it's gonna do my swipe attack. I don't think it's working. We're too strong for the game. And now we are stuck. They're getting a little closer. A tiny, tiny bit. I don't know that we've lost any health though. I've actually gained health. Oh my gosh. Let's get myself to 15,000 gold. Although again, I don't know if we'll actually get to keep it. If I just exit. I wonder if it saves if I go turn to title screen. Does that, okay. It does end it. But we totally could have defeated him. Yeah, it never spawned. Like, it never spawned. Is unfortunate, but it happens. Upgrades, we can upgrade a lot. More projectiles, yes. XP gems worth more, why not? projectile size up. Yeah, let's just full tilt into that. And move speed, I think. Cool. Well, that was fun. We're gonna do one more. I feel like we need to do another magic one since we just did the strength one. Let's do a dex. Go for it. The land of the lost snakes. Or the potion right there. I do not understand what direction she shoots in. Not gonna lie. Holy ring. Yeah, that sounds good. Can't quite read what it did though. Piercing nail shoot diagonally? Sure. That's a fun sound effect. I like it. Damage plus knockback. Okay, so you can actually keep things away from us some too, which would be nice. Arrow shot, sure. This seems to be going okay. Let's just upgrade her as a ranger. Just gonna hang out here until one of the explanation point things spawn. It's probably our best way to go. Trying to grab as much experience as we can. Oh, our holy ring got bigger. Useful. Kind of allow us just to walk into the crowd a little bit. Holy nails. That also sounds like an item that would be a nice thing. I mean, stigmata is, I suppose. That is the thing. But yeah, this seems to be working very well. I like the ranger so far. Oh, it spawned so close. Like, never happens. Oh, Frederick the Frog. I don't think we've seen him before. Not easy being cute. Ooh, and piercing damage. That's huge. Okay, that'll be very helpful. Very, very helpful. Although our range on our nails doesn't seem that big. But we'll just keep working on that. Oh, our little frog butt is so cute. Oh, I can't. It is just too adorable. Too adorable. I am choosing to leave the music off for a little bit. It got a bit much during the last level. Plus, then we get to hear all the adorable sound effects just super clearly. Because of the pierce, though, we do end up with experience like everywhere, but that's okay. And more holy ring damage, that way we don't have to be too scared to get close. Mostly for when we end up with a boss, I feel like is going to be the most useful. Oh, walk right into him. That's fine. Kind of waiting for something to spawn, so then we can head that way. Might as well let things come to us until then, right? This is what it feels like. We get some experience. Ooh, something south of us. Let's level her up. Just in general. If we can get the experience gather thing, that would be very useful. Increase dex stat, increase damage, AI-based attacks of 2. And that is low. Yeah, let's do that so we can make those a bit better. We're gonna need that damage to scale pretty effectively, or it's just not gonna work out because our SPI is so low. So I think, now that I think I probably mean spirit? Probably? I wasn't sure earlier. But it makes sense. Okay, spawn this way. Let's do hers. Yep. Movement speed's pretty nice though, not gonna lie. Enjoying the movement speed. Definitely helps. Down. Steal the Paladin. Helps with Holy Ring, but I think I'm gonna reroll. It's basically the same options. Okay. Let's do Arrow Shot. That's okay. Didn't get great options, but they were alright. Does make our Holy Ring better, so that's something. Whoa. Almost feels like with this character, like you're playing that balloon game. Where you're trying to like, with the monkey, you're trying to like throw darts at balloons. It feels a lot like that to me. When a bunch of them like explode in a row. Let's do that one to kind of help our overall damage. Our ring isn't able to just outright kill things. Damage increased would be very helpful. A boss spawn and an exclamation point spawn. We'll head up that way. Also go after the boss. Okay, damage. Go towards the exclamation point though. Although now there's two. Need some unadulterated attacks there. Okay, what do we got? Not great options again. Not great options at all. Increases defense just seems like a good idea. At least that'll help us a little bit. Another boss spawn. Didn't kill the other one yet. It's usually a bad sign, I feel like. We need more characters that help with this stuff. Okay, there we go. Holy robes, yes. Let's see. Feathered cap decreases cooldown for dex attacks. That could be good. Ooh, increases number of projectiles. That was also really good. With the size. Alright. Doesn't look like that would affect any of ours. And more damage. Not perfect damage, but more damage. Dump some more. Try not to walk directly into the boss. Would maybe be a smarter move on my part, but you know, we're trying. I'm trying to pay attention for exclamation points. Let's do that one. I think that's a good idea. What was that one? I don't know what that noise sound effect was. Level again? Pretty close. There we go. Let's do this one. Nice. I did it. See what it upgrades. Our robes. Sure, sure. Not helpful. Sure. Paladin. That one. Holy ring. Yep. Okay. That does seem to have helped quite a bit. See if we can defeat this boss before we have to deal with the other one too much. Oh, there's an exclamation point this way. Let's go. We'll come back for the experience. Maybe, if I remember. Hey, help. It almost sounds like they're popping like balloons. He says the size of deck-based attacks. Yes, that could be useful. You can get them. If you are a bit more of a diagonal from us. Being a little greedy. Yay, we did it. Let's also do that one. On Pierce. I mean, that all sounds really good. Then let's see what the treasure chest upgrades. Ooh, 3. Witch hat. Our knight. And our paladin. Cool. Be helpful. Let's go back this way to see if we can get some of this experience we left behind. Like we left quite a bit. Oh yeah, and there's another boss. I totally forgot. Totally forgot. Try to keep them in diagonals a bit. If we can. Could do more damage that way. Oh, let's do more Pierce. Like that can't possibly go wrong. It's giving us a lot of experience. Yep, let's do the size. Oh, these golems are always really tough. There's that one. And that one. Our knight's probably the least important upgrade right now, just because it doesn't really help much of our other stuff. I could reach that stuff though. I don't know how close in the Holy Ring they need to be to like take damage, but it seems like fairly close. Before they start to get like take damage or knockback. Let's circle back around. I don't know if the big shards are more experienced, but I think they are. Not positive though. Maybe we get those from the bigger deeds. Not entirely sure if that is factual or not. Seems like it should be true though. It also seems like we really need another exclamation point to spawn so that we can get something that helps us pick things up from further away. I forgot what the ability is called. Just that it exists. Oh, here's some more experience. Grab these. Don't really know where I left the boss over there. Really doesn't feel like we're doing enough damage though. So scary. There are more Holy Ring damage. It's kind of what's letting us walk through the smaller guys. If we can pretty much destroy them untouched. The golems are the big problem at the moment. Oh no, another boss spawned. That's not good. That's not good at all. We haven't even defeated the other one. Have some experience. Bosses down there. Let's see if we can get this one dead first. And then we'll go for the new set of bosses. I guess we'll try anyway. Holy Ring's doing even more damage now. Actually dealing with the golems to an extent. I guess we have piercing, so yeah, getting the bosses on top of each other like this is actually helpful. Now that I think about it. He should still be getting hit back there. Get more experience, maybe? I am surprised another exclamation point the place hasn't spawned in though. I don't know exactly what dictates it though, so maybe I just need to get to a certain point first. So it hasn't felt overly consistent this whole time. I grab experience too. Say they're shielding him, but we do have piercing. Almost dead. Okay, we did it. We did it. Wing shield, increased size of dex-based attacks. Alright. That's a thing. Oh, apparently we also got a magnet. Let's do that for a second. Holy nail. Cool, 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 cool. Probably help with these bosses quite a bit. But we need health really bad. Let's see if we can go find some torches real quick. Maybe, mayhaps, perhaps. I didn't realize I could control. I think I can control his lance, and I did not realize that this whole time. I will not remember to do that. Basically ever. Hello? Health potion? Anywhere? I haven't seen any torches. It's also possible we busted them from really far away as well. Just because of the piercing and everything. But I'm not entirely sure. Keep trying to kill the boss if we can. Dang it. It's all that torch, but it was just money. Show me wrong. Helpful. Later. But I really need health now. Ow. I keep completely losing track of my character. That is a problem. It's not good. I definitely do not think we have enough damage for this. Very not bueno. I'm gonna try to get some experience. I'll go back with once we came. Do this one, I guess. Trying to dive through everyone. Health. Why not hot? Game. A little ridiculous. On the not wanting to give me health front. Yeah, this is gonna end very badly. Oh man, this is a fun character so far though. I'll play the ranger again next time. It is very fun. Neat combos, I feel like, could be possible to get the right combination of things. One of those being health potions. Apparently the game has decided I do not deserve. Like, at all. Still not a single one. So rude, game. Keep trying to kill the boss. Oh, we're gonna get close in on though. Sure. I don't know where we've gone that we can get experience. I'm so turned around. I'm always turned around in these kind of games, so here's some. Someone's leveled everything. No bueno. We can try to kill things. These guys are like not having any issues with our barrier or anything. Oh, there you go. Still can't kill the boss. Oh, an exclamation point, but I don't think we'll actually be able to use it. There are so many bad guys. Oh, we did it. Always potioning me not die is my goal here. Since apparently we don't get any potions otherwise. Where'd the boss go? Over here. We'll try at least. I don't think it's gonna work, but we're gonna try. And some health. Basically using our levels as a cleric. Pretty much what has happened. Oh my gosh, there's so much damage points. There's so many enemies. They're not even dying, they're just taking heaps of damage and then not dying. It's fantastic. I just don't think it's gonna work long term. I'll try though. We're barely trying to stay away from this boss so we can try to do as much damage as possible with him. You're so dead. 95 health. That is not good. Not good at all. Can we get some levels? Maybe that'll help. I feel like we're doing like next to no damage. That's okay. What I get for using it, not paying attention to where my attacks used. I thought the other ranged ones were dex too. I was wrong. My level again. Be very helpful. Oh, we're so dead. I did not see these mountains here. With 45 health. Oh my gosh. Not be able to hold on this long. Like, at all. I'm shocked. But also really surprised more of the exclamation point places haven't spawned. We've gotten barely any this run. Might have to look into what dictates those, just to see for our future knowledge. We're not damaging anything. Oh my gosh. They're all just hanging out in our aura, basically. I mean, they're taking damage, I guess technically, you can see it. But not enough. Not enough at all. Oh, there we go. That was fun, though. Yay! Got more achievements, though. Well, that is nice. That is nice. Yeah, only 255 healing. That's it. That is nuts. Like, actually crazy. But we unlocked the frog and the paladin and some other evolved stuff. So, I mean, that was worth it. I just want to see what they do real quick. Paladin. Oh, yeah, they're coins to unlock. I forgot. He's so cute. Shadowless Slash. Interesting. And then Ice Hammer. That sounds fun. So maybe next time we'll do that. Sorry for the shorter stream today. I have some stuff I need to get ready for the rest of this week and the art fair on Friday, as well as, or on Saturday, sorry. As well as our Etsy is back up and running, so I'm working on editing that and getting things added on. Be sure to check that out. It's Chikari's Emporium without the apostrophe. And I will potentially see y'all later tonight as well. We'll see, but if not, I will see you Friday night. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for checking out this game with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.